What's up, YouTube and Facebook, and welcome to Not Quite Mint. I'm Tom.
And I am Rich, and we are definitely staying here today. Not quite mint.
Not Quite Mint. And today we have an extremely special show for you. We are going to be talking comics, but with a very special guest. So let's get into it.
Yes, guys, that is right. As Tom says, we have got CEO of Boom Studios, Richie, in for an interview. Really looking forward to this, and can't thank Ross enough for obviously coming in and doing this in our very first Let's Talk Comics show. So do make sure, if you want to see more of this kind of content, as well as unboxings and reviews and all sorts of stuff, smash that subscribe button down below, hit the dingly bell, and also make sure that you give us that thumbs up, and we'll do more of this content here. And also, guys, if there's somebody that you want us to try and speak to, or you've got any other questions, obviously whack it in the comments down below. We'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. And if you're not following us on any of the social medias, make sure you are. And also make sure you're following Ross Richie on the social medias, because he is live on Instagram and he also has his very own YouTube channel. Very well. So let's get into the interview, shall we, Rich?
Let's get into it and talk comics.
All right then, guys, we have Ross Richie with us, the CEO from Boom Studios. Hello, Ross. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So we're here to talk comics, or at least the comic industry, with yourself. So what is people who don't know who you are, as it were, who is Ross Richie, and how did you get Boom started?
Well, I am a comic book and graphic novel publisher, and I have won the Best Publisher Award from Diamond Comics 9 times. And
that's crazy.
I have won a bunch of Eisner Awards and Harvey Awards and GLAAD Awards, and Boom has 5 New York Times bestsellers. And beyond that, I started the company in 2005, and most people would be familiar with Boom from Something is Killing the Children, and Once and Future, We Only Find Them When They're Dead, and 7 Secrets. Or you might be a fan of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And if I go on too much, other people might be familiar with us from being the publisher of Mouse Guard and Lumberjanes.
I had the free comic book day Mouse Guard, and I recently gave it to my friend's 1-year-old son as like a keepsake for him to have as he grows up. It was a really cool book, actually, and I liked that it almost looked like the old Peter Rabbit kind of books. I thought that was really cool. Really nice touch.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a lot of fun. Mouse Guard is a great series, and I would really encourage your audience to follow me on Instagram. One of the things that I've been doing is really enhancing my Instagram presence over the past 2 months. And I've been looking at a lot of questions that people are posting there. And sometimes I make videos where I have a direct answer to the question in the video. And I'm also just launched a YouTube channel. And the channel is focused on interviewing. Right now, we're interviewing writers. We will interview artists. But the first interview that I did a really in-depth conversation with James Tynion IV, the writer of Batman right now, as well as Something is Killing the Children and Department of Truth. And in it, my hope is, as I look online, there's a lot of people that are curious about writing comics, and there's a lot of people that want to know more about the craft of making comics. And so I thought, from my particular vantage point, I had a very unique advantage, or a very unique perspective, and that was that I'm a publisher.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in the creative process, and I'm not a creative, but I've been involved in it. And so I can ask specific questions that people that maybe are comics journalists wouldn't know, because they haven't done the process, or if they're just fans, they wouldn't have any idea. And so it's a very long format. And so the first interview I did with James Tynion was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And tomorrow I'm going to drop the third part of a Kieran Gillen interview that's 3 hours.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, yeah. And really what we do is we stop and we take time and we unpack things. And in particular, one of the things that I like to do is, for people that are trying to break into comics, I like to really analytically examine what were the skills and what were the talents of the people that I'm interviewing. So James Tynion has a different set of skills and a different set of talents than Kieran Gillen. And in the Kieran interview, for instance, what's really interesting about Kieran's arc is that he didn't really grow up reading comics, peripherally some, but he was much more of a video gamer. And he became a video game journalist. And his perspective was always very analytical. He wrote analytically about music, and went so far as to work for NME, New Music Express. And he was a video game reviewer. And through that process, he built the analytical tools so that when he started to write comics, he sort of was always fascinated with the form. And it was much more of a left brain approach to writing, where he would break things apart for its constituent parts, and then he would use those pieces to assemble the stories that he created. And that's like a real bedrock to his creativity. And I thought that was very unique. And so during the 3-hour interview, I try to spotlight these different moments in his career where these things converge. And he didn't break in until much later in his professional career. He really didn't fall in love with comics until he was in his late 20s. So it's a very different path. James Tynion, on the other hand, falls in love with comics in elementary school and is an avid superhero reader all through high school. And he reconstructs his curriculum during school to focus on writing fiction, and always wanted to be a fiction writer. And by the time he's in college, he's helping Scott Snyder write superhero comics. So he has a much earlier break-in. So it's everybody has a different story. And so part of this was to tell the next generation, there is no place, there's no form to fill out. You don't get to show up, and if you're just patient in line, you get a chance. Doesn't happen like that. You know, I put a link up on Twitter that was an answer to, you know, I was putting a link to the YouTube show, and somebody asked me a question about, you know, with Boom being a first-time writer, being able to break in. And, you know, what I'm fond of saying is, you don't go to, in North America, I call it soccer. In the UK, you call it football. So you don't go to a football match and expect to be able to buy a ticket, go sit in the bleachers, and then walk down up to the coach and say, "Put me in."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's an expectation that you play in elementary school and you get better in junior high, and you play in high school, and then maybe you play at the collegiate level. I don't know the particular path in the UK, if you go professional after high school or you go to college and then go professional, but there's a progression, right? And so that so anyway, I was giving an answer, and then, you know, somebody showed up with snark on Twitter. I know that's shocking that Twitter would be snarky. Somebody showed up and said, you know, like, you know, thanks, bro. You know, I guess you have to do the work. And it's like, yeah, you do. Yeah. You have to do the work. And that's required. So my hope is that I can just, you know, share all the little nitty-gritty details in a very long format that's, you know, very specific. And it's not a soundbite show. It's not a glitzy, I obviously need a light for my camera. I'm using my computer. It's very low tech, but I think it has something in it that other people don't have the opportunity to hear, which is a publisher talking to writers and somebody that's familiar with the creative path and that can sort of like guide the conversation in a way that the audience can get it. And, in the meantime, there's been a lot of Something is Killing the Children and Punchline fans and fans of Phonogram and Wicked and Divine that just love to hear all those projects came together.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like what you're doing with it. And I also like the idea that it's a little bit raw. You don't have the light and everything set up. It's kind of nice that you've got that. I think that's quite a nice touch. I saw your Instagram post about the guy or someone who said to you, let me write Power Rangers, let me, sack whoever it is and I'll write Power Rangers for free. And I thought your response was excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's deconstruct that for the audience a bit. So, when I started to get more engaged on Instagram, I just got buried in people messaging me that they wanted to write Power Rangers. And, it's a very awkward, sort of, they show up all sincerity, and there is sort of a disconnect that can happen with people that if they feel like they really love something and they really connect with it, they feel an ownership over it. And there's a sense of personal identification. And one of the ways that you express your fandom is, you get more and more immersed in the property and you learn more and more about the nuances and the great properties. The more that you learn about them, the more that you can marvel at how well put together they are. And that then gives you greater depth and you learn more and more and more. And then you become the guy that's the expert. Right. And so now it isn't just that you're the expert, it's that you're the expert of all the experts on the Facebook forum or on Twitter or whatever, or on Instagram. Your posts get more likes than anybody that's following you when you post about your thing. And you then kind of can get a sense of this is your thing. Mm-hmm. And so the sense is, and then, you read the comic and you go, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. I know so much better than he does. Right. And so then you message the publisher and you say, I'm the guy. And, and I love this so much, I do it for free. Well, first of all, having people work for free is not something we want to do. People should be paid for their work. And the second thing is that this sort of sense of ownership that comes from really loving something is disconnected from cultivating the expertise to be able to do it. And I know that there's a lot of people that are active on fan fiction, and I think fan fiction's great, and I think that is a legit form of expression, and we have a million examples of success that come out of that. But I think the thing to keep in mind is that fan fiction is not comic book publishing, and fan fiction doesn't face deadlines. There isn't a monthly publishing schedule. There isn't an interaction with an artist. If there is an interaction with a comic book artist, it isn't on a monthly publishing schedule. And Hasbro's not approving all the pages and asking for rewrites and changes for things that are off brand. And believe me, if you think that every single thing that would come out of your mind would be on brand, Hasbro has a different thought. I have nothing negative to say for Hasbro. They've been an excellent partner. But there isn't a script that doesn't go to them that doesn't require changes. And so that's a professional context that the fans are unfamiliar with. And it's a world, I don't expect them to know that. That's not a world that they have any access to. I don't begrudge them. But there's a lot of aspects to this that people don't know. And this comes back around to showing up for the football match and saying, put me in, coach, because I know all the player statistics and I know the history of the franchise and I know this team that you're playing and I know what their weaknesses are. And that's all great, but that doesn't mean that you can play the match. And within this, writing is hard, and writing under deadline is hard, and writing in 22-page chunks is hard monthly, and doing it for an artist in a way that they could draw it. There's a joke amongst writers and artists. We get together at conventions and have dinner together. And what's classic is an artist to say, a writer writes splash page, a football stadium. There's 50,000 people here, and one of the players is shaking with anxiety.
Yeah.
Right? So easy to write. And as an artist, how are you supposed to draw this massive stadium?
Yeah.
And not cut any corners and show that there's 50,000 people there, and then zoom in so that you can see that the protagonist is sweating. And you're supposed to do both, right? So writing for a comic book artist is very hard. And the artistic process, I mean, it's a whole thing. And so, I had, gotten such a consistent sort of this invasive hire me to write Power Rangers that I said, look, this is clearly worthy of a post. This is something that people don't know, and they're demonstrating that they can't. And so I could get mad at them. That's not productive. They don't know. So why don't I break it down? And the aspect that I haven't gotten to yet is we have a great Power Rangers writer. Ryan Parrott is doing an excellent job. And, the series is doing terrific. It has done well in the past. Kyle did an excellent job. And here's Ryan, and he's doing a terrific job. And now you want to show up and you want me to hire you, who's never done it. And you want me to get rid of the guy that's doing a great job? Right? So, that would be the sort of thing that fans would hate.
Yeah.
Right? A fan would go on Twitter would be like, Boom is a bunch of dummies. They just fired Ryan Parrott, who was doing a great job, and they hired somebody that nobody knew who they were and had never written anything before.
Yeah.
Right? And then they would say, you suck, you did it wrong. Right?
Yeah,
But that's what's getting proposed to me. There's probably 3 more messages in my Instagram account while we've been talking.
Yeah,
probably.
It's like your analogy of the whole sports thing. It's like somebody turning up to a stadium in years gone by and saying, I can play right wing, boss, put me on, I know all the teams' names and everything. And it's like, well, I've already got David Beckham. It's it's just never gonna it's never gonna happen. And like you say, you've got to prove yourself. You've got to cut your oats before you get out on the field. Definitely. So.
Well, and in a solutions-oriented way, one of the things that I point to is, Donny Cates is a guy that's had a lot of success. And I watched Donny Cates break into the business and do his first series, and then do his second series, and then do his third series, and go and look at all the work he did before God Country happened. Yeah. He did a ton of work before God Country. And then God Country became a hit. And then there was a series of other things, and then wham, here comes Marvel, and, off we go. And so, that's a great example of somebody who did the work, and he broke in, and Donnie did a great job as a fan, being able to interact with the professional community, cultivate relationships, demonstrate capability. He just did it all. Like, he's one of the best examples of coming from nowhere and getting in. And so, I don't have any plans right now to interview Donnie, but I'd love sometime in the next 3 years, to have him break all that down piece by piece, because I think it's a shining example of people that can break in. So, not everybody does it the same way, but if you think Donny Cates didn't do the work, you think that you're going to roll out of bed and you're going to be Donny Cates? No, Donny Cates wasn't Donny Cates. I mean, one of the things that happens is when you go do the work, you get better.
Yeah.
So you got to go do the work.
Practice makes perfect. And as you say, with like the whole fan fiction thing, so many fans. I mean, I know, like my wife often jokes with me that when she was at university with some of her sort of like literary friends who were on her course, they used to write, fan fiction for Lord of the Rings type of stuff and things like that. And it always makes me laugh. And we often talk about the left brain and the right brain. And I think with us here at Not Quite Mint, it's kind of like I'm that sort of break it down, sort of left brain, and then you've got Tom, who's much more creative and artistic. Obviously, he draws and does all that, whereas I sort of do the keyword research and sort of think, oh well, shall we try this or shall we try that? And it's things like that. You need that balance, don't you, in any creative team? I think so. It's really interesting hearing that come through.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
what you're saying about the stadium thing, I've come across that myself in my day job. I'm a graphic designer. I design trophies and awards, and somebody will send me just a page of like, we want it to be inspiring and it needs to be epic and it needs to be massive, and that's it. That's all I've got to work with. I've got no idea of like what they want, how they want it to be presented, and it's like, I can do epic. I can give you a load of stuff that's epic, but are you going to like it? Can you narrow it down a little bit more?
Yeah. It's like you want to send them 5 awards and be like, which one of these do you like rank order them, right? Yeah. Sort of by what you like so that I can understand. But yeah, it's, and to loop back to the fan fiction thing, the thing about fan fiction is that, Gail Simone came from fan fiction. And so, there's lots of talented people that are writing it, and it's a legit career path. Now I'm going to talk about a bunch of things that I don't know about. Okay. But my understanding is Twilight came out of fan fiction, and that's hugely successful. And 50 Shades of Grey came out of that, and that's hugely successful. And so, I think good writing is good writing. And, I think it's resourceful and clever that if you don't have a path to own the characters and you want to demonstrate talent, that they go through that. That's great. But the distinction I want to make is writing a novel for the internet, or even a short story or any prose fiction, and done within your time frame is completely different than writing for comics. And even if you are writing fan fiction comics and uploading them on the internet, that's totally different than doing it on a monthly publishing schedule with Hasbro notes.
Yeah.
And so, it's I want to give these folks their due, and I do not want to be dismissive of them. And so that is very important that they, hear that they have done a lot of work, but that it is, apples and oranges are fruits, but they're different, right? Yeah. It's not apples and orangutans, but it is apples and oranges. So, yep.
Yeah, Ross, you said about not being a creative person. Did you start out writing? Was it Malibu Comics that you originally worked at?
I worked out at I worked in marketing at Malibu Comics. I was the kid in my class growing up that drew. And so my classmates, when I go back to my reunions, they all want to see my paintings, which I no longer do, because I know what a really talented artist is, because I hire them all the time. And I know that I am, at best, I would have killed myself over my entire career to be, at best, the bottom of the middle of the pack. And so I always counsel people that most people have many talents. And if you're lucky, some of those talents can work together. Sometimes you're a really great woodworker who's really great at cooking, and they have nothing to do with each other. But every once in a while, you're a kid that can draw, which was me, who also would go to the comic shop and buy comics and go, why don't they put these 2 series together, and why don't they build this mythology out? And I don't understand why this creator-owned series isn't with this publisher, it's with this other publisher. And I was always playing those games in my mind, and I was always buying comics, and I was the guy that could clearly see the hit that was coming.
Yeah.
And so, sort of, and I didn't have a lot of money. And so I could never, once something became a hit, I could never pay the back issue prices. And so I had a survival instinct, which was to be able to get out ahead of something that could be a hit, so that I wouldn't have to pay through the nose when it happened. And so, you have a stack of different talents. And what I found through the years, when I went to work at Malibu, I was very, very lucky because I was in Los Angeles. I had a film degree, and I was running around as a production assistant, and the work was freelance, and it was catch as catch can, and it was just too destabilizing for my taste. And I needed something more predictable and more structured. And so I was at a comic book convention in Malibu. I got into a conversation with somebody at the Malibu booth, and they offered me a job just when I needed a job, which, that's my breaking in story. I mean, that's just nuts, right? I mean, who has that kind of an opportunity given to them? And it clearly, utterly changed my life. I needed a job. Somebody offered me a job. I happened to be at a comic book convention in a conversation with a publisher. Bang, there you go. So then I went to work at Malibu. And for the people that don't know, Malibu published in the early 90s a series called the Ultraverse. Now, Malibu is the company that originally launched Image. So the first year of Image's publishing, if you buy a copy of Spawn or Wildcats #1, if you open the cover, on the inside front cover is the Malibu logo. And so for the first 12 issues of Spawn were all published by Malibu. And then Image spun out of Malibu and did their own thing. And so I came in a little after that, I think, in the chronology. And then they launched their own new universe, which is called the Ultraverse. And they had also published Street Fighter comics and Planet of the Apes comics, and a bunch of other series that are
Mortal Kombat series.
I'm sorry?
I think I've got their Mortal Kombat series.
Yes, absolutely. And so then the management would get mad at us at lunch because we had those coin operated video games in the break room. Everybody's lunch suddenly became an hour and 5 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. So anyway, I worked at Malibu, and during this time period, they also launched Bravura. So they had legendary creators. Jim Starlin, who created the Infinity Gauntlet, was working there. Barry Windsor Smith, who's famous for doing the Weapon X series in Marvel Comics Presents and launching Conan as a comic book. And then Steve Englehart, who is one of the biggest superhero comic book writers, did seminal runs on everything but Batman in particular. And I'm overwhelmed with the number. I'm just going to leave out so many people. Walter Simonson, famous for creating Beta Ray Bill and working on Thor. Howard Chaykin, who's one of the greats. It's just a murderer's row of Hall of Famers. Steve Gerber, who created Howard the Duck, who's without question one of the biggest influences on comic book writing. I don't think there'd be any Vertigo publishing without Steve Gerber. Changed the business. It's just a list and list and list. I'm so flat-foot, I'm going to forget really important creators. I can name another 15. And so a tremendous experience at the top of the market. This is back when Spawn sold 1 million copies. And so the Ultraverse, launched at a really high level. And then Marvel bought Malibu. And I had moved out to Los Angeles with my film degree to work in the movie business. And so I went back to work in the movie business. I ended up becoming a reader for Arnold Schwarzenegger.
That's so cool. I heard you say that on Superman's comics, and I was like, I've got to ask him about Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's one of my biggest heroes.
Well, I didn't get the fortune of really being able to interact with Arnold personally. And so what I did was I worked for his agent, and Arnold got so many scripts that what they would do is they would kind of reserve me. Because what would be typical would be that a studio in the morning would decide that they wanted, this is well before email was a thing. And they would decide in the morning that they were going to offer the script to Arnold. And so they would send a messenger with a physical copy of the script. And I would need to go to the agency and pick it up and read it that day. And then be able to give feedback. And the thing is Arnold was being offered everything everywhere.
Of course.
And so, And so part of it was sort of like, is this script in the middle of the stack of all the things we're being offered? Is it the best thing? Is it in the top third? Where is it relative to all the other plates being spun? So, is it good? And so there was a lot of that. It was a lot of fun. And then I was getting older and decided that I needed to sort of do some other things. And I developed a relationship with Keith Giffen, who's a legendary comic book writer and artist and one of my favorites of all time. And Keith really encouraged me. He called me and said, I'm doing a series at Image and you're going to write it. And I said, Keith, the funny thing is I'm not a writer. And he said, I'm doing a series at Image and you're writing it. And I said, Keith, I'm not a writer. And he said, I'm doing a series at Image and you're going to write it. So I said, okay, Keith, this is the last time I'm going to warn you I'm not a writer. And here's how this is going to go. I'm going to write this comic and it's not going to be good. And you're really talented. And you're going to come in and you're going to fix it. And you will never have to worry about me getting mad at you. And I will never resent you because I know that I'm not any good. It'll be more of a miracle that you don't do any revisions. I just know you will be doing revisions. Yeah. So that's pretty much how it went. And we had a lot of fun doing a series called Dominion Image. And then after that, Keith came to a convention here in LA, and we were at a little hole in the wall drinking beer. And Keith said, you know, you need to start your own comic book publishing company. And I thought he was crazy. And so I woke up the next day and thought, you know, Keith has been pretty successful, and he's been successful for decades. At that time, he had been successful in the business for 30 years. And the thing that's really remarkable about Keith is that if you go to a convention and you sit down and you look at the people that have lined up to get his autograph, he got Legion of Superheroes fans, you have Lobo fans. They don't talk to each other.
Oh, I bet.
Right? You got Ambush Bug fans, and God knows Ambush Bug doesn't talk. Those fans don't talk to Lobo. They don't talk to Legion of Superheroes. Right? You got the Funny Justice League guys. You got Defenders fans from the 70s. I mean, it's incredible how the guy is a complete chameleon. He recreates his career every 3 to 5 years. You know, we haven't even gotten to 52. And so he is so nimble and is so clever. You know, one of his biggest hits, the Funny Justice League, I would talk to him about how he came up with that idea. And what he said was, you know, Watchmen and Dark Knight had come out, and it was clear that Grim and Gritty was what the market was doing. And he felt like if you go do Grim and Gritty at that point, you're follow the leader. So let's go the other direction. So flip it around. Let's go be funny and do something completely different. And that kind of market instinct to me said that he understood as a freelancer how to pay attention to the market. He understood what was creative and fresh. He understood what his talent skills were, and so what he could offer the market and what he could do well and what risks to take. And so all those things told me that he had the kind of antenna that maybe comic book publishing was something I should give a shot. So thank you, Keith.
Yeah, nice one, Keith.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been courageous enough to do it without his encouragement.
All right, and that's it, guys. That is the end of the first Let's Talk Comics video with Ross Richie. This is part one. There will be a second part, so make sure that you subscribe, hit the dingly bell, and like this video so you get to see it. Yeah, and see the next one even.
Yeah, and just as I say, absolutely massive props out to Ross Richie there. It'd be great to have him on again in the future. I'd really love to, and hopefully at some point we'll do some kind of a vlog. If we ever get out to San Diego Comic Con, the dream is still alive, people. Maybe we'll bump into him and have another catch up. That would be absolutely fantastic, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yeah.
But as I say, until next time, obviously subscribe, like, dingly bell, and take care till next time.
Stay safe. Stay sexy. See ya.